Hi, I'm here. Hi, it's Elizabeth McNamara from East Greenwich News, and I'm here today with Mike Zarrella, who
Hello.
is finishing his first term as an East Greenwich Town Councilor. And he's the final interviewee I have of the town councilors. We're doing those this year instead of a candidates forum because you guys were all running unopposed. And it seemed to make more sense just to kind of talk to you all one-on-one and see what your experience was like and why you're sticking around, or you hope to be sticking around, presumably will be sticking around for another term. So hi, Mike.
How are you doing?
Well, other than snow and COVID, I'm okay. I got to pack some candy today in little bags to give out.
Yeah, I went shopping too.
Distance at a distance, but anyway. So I guess I'll just start by asking how it's been. You had not, I'm trying to think, you had not served on a town board before. You know, I know Mike Donegan had, Ray knew, Mark, of course, had already been on a town council before. But, you know, so this was kind of your first delving into town government?
Yes, that's correct. It was an interesting experience. It was a lot of learning. I would say the first 6 months to a year was just learning everything. It was difficult because we didn't have a town manager, we didn't have a finance director. We basically were acting as a town council and doing a ton of other stuff that really wasn't supposed to be our job, but we had to do it at that time.
And, you know, then you guys hired, I guess first you hired fire chief, new town solicitor, eventually, and Mike D'Amico as an interim finance help. And then eventually you hired Trish, and then as finance director, and Andy Nada as our town manager. So that was a lot of hiring. You feel good about the hires?
I feel very good about the hires. Honestly, if I was to do nothing else but those 3 hires, I would think I did a great job as a council person. Trish is tremendous. She does an incredible job. She's fixing the finance department, which was a mess when she got there. Andy is one of the most educated town managers in the entire state. And it's just amazing what we did. And the good thing is we as a council decided not to put any groups together. We interviewed everybody ourselves. We did it all by ourselves. We didn't spend $15,000 to do a search committee like they did with the last fire chief. So we saved the town council. We saved the town a ton of money by doing it ourselves and not sending it out for other people to review. It was a lot of work. That first 6 months, it felt like we were meeting twice a week, every week. It felt like a full-time job.
Didn't you were counting up the number? I can't remember how many meetings did you have in the first 40 something. It was a lot of meetings.
I think it was like 40 something in the first 6 months. I'm not exactly sure, but if you include all the interviews too, and Joe Duat was tremendous in helping us, but I remember he sent us 120 resumes to review for town manager.
120.
There were 120 approximately 120 resumes to read.
Joe is our public works director, but he did step in to serve as interim for about 9 months there, actually. Yes. Ended up being. So looking back at it, kind of that first, you had a funny time because that first year was really kind of building back up. And then we start the new year, you kind of start budget stuff. You've got some ideas of what you want to do, and then suddenly COVID hits and everything changes again.
Well, that's the funny part. I figured the first year would be, okay, let's fix the problem. Let's try to get East Greenwich back on the right track. Let's get the schools funded. Let's keep the tax rate low. Let's basically get everything organized so that we go forward. And then all the ideas that I want to do got put on hold because of COVID. If you read my Pendulum article, I do want, and I think I spoke to you this numerous times, I would like to see a rec center in East Greenwich. I went to the South Kingston rec center, and it was unbelievable, the amount of basketball courts, jogging tracks, meeting rooms. We don't have anything like that in East Greenwich.
That's a town facility, and I haven't been there, so I guess I need.
Yes, I believe it's a town facility in South Kingston. It's right near Old Mountain Field, a little north of that. And I coached baseball, basketball, soccer, and I will say, coaching my son's basketball team, we would have practices where the entire league would have to share the floor at the same time. So you really couldn't have an individual practice to go over skills because there just wasn't enough room. You couldn't do plays because there wasn't enough room. And a town like East Greenwich clearly should have, the facilities it needs so that the kids could have the coaching and the development that they need. In addition, a lot of it, there are men's leagues. There are other times that we can rent out gyms to people. Right now, the EGSA, I don't know about this year, but in the past has spent tons of money going to Wild World of Indoor Sports or going to Teamworks. And now, if we had our own facility, that could be money that either we give to the EGSA or the EGSA could be paying the town. So they're using our facilities instead of making the money go out of our town. In addition, when the kids get older, it'd be nice to have rec time. So my son is going to be in high school next year. I'd rather him being at a gym playing basketball with his friends than out hanging on the streets. When kids are occupied doing something they enjoy, they're less likely to get in trouble. They're less likely to do something stupid. This is the type of stuff. Every day I go by East Greenwich on, I think it's Saturday mornings, and I see these adults doing yoga class. Where are they going to go now? They used to do it outside of Cole. Wouldn't it be nice if they could rent that rec facility, have their yoga classes there? It brings a small town like East Greenwich together and makes it even closer. And I really think a rec facility in this town would be good. In addition, I think it would increase property values because it would be another asset that our town has. I think if we do it right, we could actually turn it into a moneymaker. I don't know if it's feasible to put a hockey rink or a swimming facility there too, but if we could do it, why spend all the money in Warwick renting their rinks when that's money that we could have our town save? And in addition, we could get other towns to come here and rent from us. If we do it right, it could be profitable, but it will make the town a better place.
Is there a place for it in town? I know we probably shouldn't go too far down this topic. Hold on just a second.
No.
James, my son James has decided to serenade us with some piano, but
Hi, James.
I'll tell him you said hi. I mean, maybe it's too far in the weeds, but any thoughts about where that could go?
I've talked to people in the planning department, and we're always looking for land. It might be something that has to be donated. It could be land that the town buys. That's the problem that we have compared to a place like Exeter or South Kingston or North Kingston, where you have these huge towns with humongous areas of land. Right now, I don't know the exact place. There are places near the Coventry, East Greenwich border. There's a lot of undeveloped land over there where the McDonald's is. Actually, people don't even realize that's in East Greenwich. That's where the hockey rink used to be a long time ago when I was a kid.
Oh, that's right. I did hear that there was a hockey rink here.
The transfer station or whatever that is now that the state runs, that was a hockey rink. I used to play there when I was a kid. It's sad that stopped being a hockey rink at some point. I don't know when, but that's an area.
That's the DOT center, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that used to be, I know that was the hockey rink.
That's a big piece of property, actually.
It's a very big piece of property.
Yeah.
And there's other land here and there. To put a good-sized facility, it's tough. I'd like to have it somewhere near the center of town. I just don't know if there's any land available for that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But, I did a lot of travel basketball with my kids, and I did go to other facilities in Massachusetts, and it's just amazing how nice they are. And I know this town could do something like that. Mm-hmm. I know that Trish, our finance director, and Andy were both involved with South Kingston when they built theirs. So they already have a lot of knowledge regarding that. So we'll have a head start with those two in East Greenwich.
Yeah, it's kind of it's obviously, we have shorter term goals that we've had to put on hold, like the parking study and I guess the waterfront study. So this gets put even farther back, which I guess is discouraging.
Yeah, I mean, really, the next 6 months to a year is COVID. I think people are tired of talking about COVID. What I'm talking about is not 3 months from now or 6 months from now. It's after the COVID crisis is over.
Right.
But we have to get through COVID. Right now, our main goal is to keep the schools open, make sure the
Mhm.
towns run financially right, and if we could keep our restaurants open. I know Andy Notter has done a tremendous job renting out heaters
Mhm.
and cables and lights so that we could keep Main Street open. I know a lot of other towns were late to the game and they weren't able to get the heaters and everything that we have. So we're actually ahead compared to most towns, and that is directly because of our town manager who did a tremendous job on this. He has bought, I believe it's like 50 heaters from California, and I know other towns like Cranston's trying to find them and they can't find them because there are none left. You know,
Oh,
you
really?
right away.
Yeah, and that was with using the money from the state, the take it outside grants, the
Yes.
25 plus now another 25, so $100,000 for this stuff.
And the town's going to own all this stuff. So when we're done, we can reuse it in the future, you know, in case something else happens again, or we could use it for different effects. So it's going to be the town owns all of this,
Mhm.
which is always good too.
Mhm. Um, Let me just look here at some of my other questions. I guess the big one is, why are you running for reelection?
I guess the main I did enjoy it. I mean, there were times where I sat there and my son would sit there and say, "Dad, you're going to go to my game tonight," or he would make me feel bad. But I understand that. There are times actually I would show up with my son after a little league game. But I enjoy what I'm doing. I feel like I work with 4 great people on the council. I think we're a team, and I think that we need to go through this together for 2 more years. Like we started fixing what would need to be fixed, but we need to follow through. There's a lot more to be done. It could easily go backwards. However, putting in place the town manager and the finance director is just it's really put us on a path where the town is getting to be automatic. I don't have to go to as many meetings now as I did before because we have the people in place that need to be there. We're not the town manager anymore. We're not the finance director anymore. Now we're the town council.
Um, One of the big questions that comes up is growth, town growth. We're one of the few municipalities that is growing, population wise and school population wise. I guess that's because people recognize we have a good school system and they want to move here, but it puts pressure on us as a town as well. What are your thoughts about development and this comp permit from the state where you're allowed to, if you are a developer and you're going to bring in at least 25% of your units are going to be deemed affordable, which is different than Section 8, just so everybody understands, but that you're able to have a fast track permitting process. And it's hard for the town to say no to.
Yeah, basically the state law makes us so we have to this. We have to have a certain amount of affordable housing. If we don't, we're in violation. Well, we're just going to have to learn how to grow as a town. People want to move here. People tell me, and I did the same thing, I could buy a house in a different town and send my kids to a private school, or I could buy a house in East Greenwich. My taxes might be a little higher depending on where it is, and it's really not that much higher compared to some of these other towns. But I get to send my kids to a public school and get just as good an education as some of these private schools. Because I will tell you, now that I have 2 kids in college, they were well prepared for college. Actually, one of my daughters actually told me she felt that East Greenwich High School was more difficult than the college she's at right now. And I don't want to talk about what college that is or anything, but it's amazing what an education people got at our high school.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, so you can understand why people would want to be here. Is there any concern that you have, like that new, it hasn't been officially proposed yet, so in a way we're all just, it's not quite real, but that 418 units that a developer is talking about building west on Division, way out by that Coventry West Greenwich line kind of.
I mean, if that goes up, depending on the number of children that move in there, we are basically going to have to start building new schools, which will get very expensive. I think in the future, this is not now, in the future, we need to think of a way to keep residents in East Greenwich, people that don't have children, because that's how things work, is everybody pays for everybody's children to go to school. Before my kids went to school, I paid for other people to go to school. And when my kids are done with school, I will pay for other people's children to go to school. The problem that we have is we have a lot of families that come in here when their kids go to kindergarten and move out the year that they graduate. That's a burden on our schools, because what ends up happening is those people are always a negative on the town. And what I mean by a negative is they might be paying $15,000 in taxes, but they're always spending $45,000 because they have 3 kids in the school. We need those people to stay. And I don't know, at some point, if we should look at like a tax incentive. If you've been here 15 years and you're over the age of 60 or 65, maybe you get a discount on your taxes. Try to get people that have been here for 20 years to stay here and not move out of town. And if you move to a different part of town because your house is too big, you still get the discount. But I don't want people to have to leave the town when their kids graduate. I want them to stay here. This is a community. I like the fact that I go to Felicia's and I know everybody in there every morning. I like that. I like when what? I'm sorry?
Don't you work there? No, I'm kidding.
Some people say that's my office.
It is your office. Your home away from office. Office away from home. I mean, that makes sense to me. I mean, I do understand there are people who leave. I wonder, is there a way for us to create the sort of community where people not only, can afford to live in, but want to stay in? Because let's face it, a lot of the people who leave are moving down to the beach. They're moving to like closer to the water or something like that. It's not necessarily cheaper, but it's pretty, and you're by the beach or something.
Those people we can't stop from leaving. If they're going to get a house on the beach, we can't offer that. They got the money, they got the town, they want to go to Narragansett. There's nothing we can do about that. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about the family that raised 2 or 3 kids here, probably got a little bigger house than they need because now their kids are in college, or and they're sitting there going, I really don't want to pay this much in taxes when I'm not sending my kids to school. Maybe we could make an incentive so their taxes either go down so they stay there. And think about what a benefit that is to the town. They're still paying taxes. However, they have no kids in school. So all their taxes get to go to pay for everybody else. That's how it works. People pay for my kids to go to school, and I'm going to pay for somebody else's kids to go to school. When people move out, it doesn't work that way. So I don't know how we can do it. I did talk to our town manager a couple times about thinking about it, but basically that's all on hold until COVID is done.
Yeah. Someone else mentioned that idea too, the idea of maybe increasing the tax break for seniors, people over 65.
Well, I would, if you were to do that, it would be people over 65 that have lived in the town for 20 years. That way, you paid a lot of taxes, so now you're going to get the benefit, not somebody that just moved in here. I mean, that's how I would like to see it done, because I want people to stay, and that's the main thing. I want, even if you move from a bigger house to a smaller house, you still get the incentive, but you get to stay in East Greenwich. You get to stay with the same people, and not, and when your kids come home, they can still hang out with their old friends from high school. And it's nice. It's nice living in a small town.
Yeah. My children, they like.
I'm sorry, Elizabeth, you're breaking up.
Let me see if I need headphones. But I know my children like that. They like the ability to be able to see their friends when they come. So, hold on. Let me see if this helps. I forgot. I should have done. Me okay?
Now I can even, yes.
Good. Sorry, I should have done that right away. I forgot. So let's see here. Looking at other things, tax rate. Speaking of taxes, we can stay on that for a minute. Traditionally, the town council has liked your town council, but previous as well, keep the tax rate to at least to 2% or lower, the rate of increase. I think you guys did it kept it below 1% this year for residents.
We did.
And I guess I'm just wondering, this year, that could be hard. We could be forced to cut services or have layoffs or furloughs. Would you be inclined at all to have a tax rate closer to the 4% cap that the state allows? Tax rate increase, sorry.
My goal was never to have a tax increase more than 2% as long as I'm on the council. To be honest with you, I'd like to see it around 1% the most every year. I don't know if that could happen this year because of COVID, but I will say this. People didn't think it could happen last year, and we did it.
Mhm.
Trish Sunland and Andy Notter are saving us money on a daily basis. They are restructuring contracts. They're finding new bank accounts. They're doing everything they can, and they're saving us a ton of money. To be honest with you, if it wasn't for COVID, we might have actually been able to get away with having a no tax increase. But because of the conditions, it changed everything around. But I cannot tell you how much money those two have saved us by being town manager and by being finance director. It's incredible. It really is. That's why I say if I did nothing else but put those two in their positions, I feel like I did a great job.
Mhm. We have seen a couple of departures lately. Kathy Bradley left recently, and I'm still looking for you, Kathy. If you're listening, I'm wanting to do an article, as well as our tax assessor. I mean, I know that you lose people on occasion. Is that a concern at all of yours?
I really liked Kathleen Bradley. She was the director of the camp that my daughter has worked at long before I was a council person. And she was one of the few people that I did speak to in great detail regarding getting the rec center. I know it always comes back to the rec center. And she was really on board for that because that would have probably been her department. But, I wish her well. I'm sure we'll find somebody else to go in and, do the job. Sometimes people retire and they move on to bigger and better things. She did a tremendous job with the camps and the COVID. I would have to say that was not easy to do. And my daughter, like I said, is a counselor at those camps, and they did a tremendous job. They really put things together for everybody.
Yeah, and I'm not sure every town was able to pull it together enough to hold those camps. So that's great. That's good to hear. The only kind of hiccup you guys had in terms of when people started showing up at meetings again, because people haven't so much, was the noise ordinance when you guys wanted to lower the volume down on Water Street. Do you have any regrets about how that played out? I mean, right now we're a bit in limbo because of COVID. We did not have the summer that we normally would have, but Blue on the Water is suing the town. We are in litigation over that. Anything you would have done differently?
No. I was actually probably the one voice that was helping Blue more than anybody else. I did think it needed to be lowered, and I will sit there and say, if you want to watch East Greenwich at work, watch those where I'm sitting next to Renew, and we are literally talking about it nonstop, and we came to an agreement where it was somewhere in between. She wanted to close everything earlier. I want to keep it open. And we came to it. Basically, we negotiated right to where I think it was perfect. Blue was able to keep the music going later, but just not as loud. We didn't cut their hours back. There was one part of the law that basically if you had 3 violations, you had to close for 90 days. I took that out because I didn't want to see anybody basically have their businesses shut down.
Yeah,
so
90 days is pretty much 90 days would be the summer season. So yeah.
Yeah, so it would have ended them if they had 3 of those. I will tell you this: a lot of times we vote 5-0, but we don't stop 5-0. We work our way to where we're going. We are not always on the same page at the beginning. There are times that I've convinced Mike Donegan to go where I want to go. There are times that Mike Donegan has convinced me to go where he wants to go. He came up with this tax rate idea that I don't know if everybody at first was, hey, I don't know if this is a great idea. And then by the time he was done explaining,
The split tax rate,
Yes.
where you can charge different rates to residents and than you did to commercial.
that
So,
was not 5-0 when that was first introduced. But by the time Mike Donegan explained it to us, he persuaded many people, and it ended up being 5-0 on the vote. I don't want people to think this is a council that's always 5-0. Usually we're finding some middle ground that we all agree with, or the person that has more expertise explains it to us, and they convince us. There have been numerous times where I started off in position A and ended up in position B because I was talked into it, and there are times where I'm at position A and I talk somebody else into position A. So I think we do a really good job. We're 5 different people that all work hard together. We're not just, lockstep on every single thing, which is important because you need different, views on everything. Otherwise, sometimes you don't see what you otherwise would see if somebody doesn't point it out to you. That's what I miss about having the debates. It would be nice to have debates because, a lot of times people come in and they ask you a question that you didn't think about, or you didn't think about the angle of that, and they bring it to your attention, and it makes you change your mind. Part of the whole reason we did the waterfront is because a bunch of the waterfront residents came to debate at the Jewish Community Center, pulled us aside and said, these are problems that we want you to, we're concerned about. If we didn't have that debate, I don't think we would have ever got to where we got to.
yeah. I wonder if that means what we really need. I mean, obviously there are the town council meetings, but maybe what could be useful, I don't know, virtually now, but in theory, holding something like an event where you guys are just there to listen to residents. That sounds like something maybe that could come from this discussion right here today.
I would love maybe once a month or once every 2 months as part of the calendar, have just like an idea calendar where people come up and say what they think. I mean, the one thing we did add is we added public comment to the beginning of all the meetings and to the end of all the meetings. So anytime somebody has something they want to talk about, either log on or hopefully we'll be back at town hall soon and come and tell us. Because all of a sudden, there could be something that we didn't think about. You come and tell us, and we will do something about it, especially if it makes sense. I mean, that's happened before. I mean, like I said, the whole noise ordinance came from the people in the town coming up to us. I mean, there are still other issues. There's still the parking. There's still the people on the motorcycles on Duke Street, interrupting everybody. Unfortunately, we can't make everybody happy. Usually, if everybody's a little mad at you, that means you're doing your job because you're compromising. And that's where I hope, we're at. That most people like us, but, don't agree with us on everything because we can't just go with one person. We can't just sit there and say, okay, we're going to do this. You have to listen to everybody, and you're going to be as fair as possible. And there is no right answer to some questions. There just isn't. Like, what should we do on Duke Street? Well, do you want to shut it down? No, you can't shut it down, but I don't want the motorcycles with the big blashes going down waking up the neighborhood. I would like to see us make that illegal in East Greenwich. The I can't think what they're called. The on the side.
Exhaust, the big exhaust pipes.
It's not Blue's fault that those people drive there in the middle of the night and make all this noise, but it does disrupt the town. Those things are very loud. They're much louder than the music they're playing. And I would like to see at some point maybe our police department giving people tickets. So people sit there and say, hey, if you got those pipes, don't go to the waterfront. You're going to end up with a ticket. That's how you stop things like that. You let the word spread that, those are not going to be heard in East Greenwich. We're not going to let you drive through a residential neighborhood with those pipes on your motorcycle and waking everybody up. And the only way you do that is if you give enough tickets, people get the message, and then they know not to bring those pipes to Main Street or to the waterfront. I have no problems with the motorcycles. I'm just talking about the ones with the pipes.
Yeah. When I've asked all of your colleagues this, or your fellow councilors, about the protest that started after George Floyd was killed in Minneapolis. We saw 3 different rallies / protests, certainly peaceful protests or rallies here in East Greenwich. We're a pretty white town. What kind of response should a town like East Greenwich have to the racial unrest we're seeing around the country, as well as the fact that, for instance, we don't really have any people of color on the police force or the fire department. I guess we have Bert. He's Latino, but
I don't know why that is. Maybe it's just because local people apply to the police force here. I am a criminal defense attorney. I don't know if you know that. I don't know if everybody knows that. I've represented a lot of people that have been victims of police brutality. I will say this. Overall, the police officers are very good. There are a lot of very good police officers. However, there are not just a couple bad apples. There are many bad apples. East Greenwich.
Are you talking about East Greenwich or
no,
overall?
I'm talking law enforcement overall.
Mhm.
And those bad apples, unfortunately, if you have a bad apple as a plumber, you got to get your toilet fixed again or something like that. But when you have a bad apple as a police officer, that does serious damage. And I think there needs to be better hiring practices for the police officers. In addition, a lot of them are put in really difficult positions. Like when you show up and you got somebody who's out of control, but he has a mental health issue, you're in a real tough position. Like at what point do you use force? At what point don't you use force?
Mhm.
When I watched the George Floyd video, I'm like, okay, I understand why he took him down. I'm not even saying I agree with that, but I understand why he did that. And I do understand why he put his knee on his back. But then you start seeing him just sit there and you could see that he was, in my opinion, he was enjoying what he was doing. And that's just not called for. And I do think maybe some of the other officers are afraid of him because he was a veteran. That was horrible. And there's just too much of it. The other one that I think is the worst one I ever saw was, and I can't think of his name, was the poor guy in New York that was selling cigarettes.
Oh,
he was
yeah.
selling Lucy cigarettes for $1. And they take him down in a chokehold and they kill him. He's dead because of a cigarette. And that's just insane. That can't happen. So there needs to be some sort of review on how to train police officers and how to hire police officers. You can't defund the police, because if you defund the police, then you end up with, like, who do you call when there's a problem? And I've had clients that have, I've seen cases where, the police need to be there. If the police don't show up there, a husband and a wife might do something to each other because of alcohol or something where they save them. So this whole defund the police is a little crazy. I think we need to reform the police. Each time I will sit there and say, the force we have now is a very good force. This is not me speaking as a council person about my police force here. I'm talking about what I see nationally.
Do you think, though, I sometimes wonder, how do you attract people of different ethnicities or, Black, Hispanic, or Latino, if we don't already, I'm not really sure what comes first, the chicken or the egg. Does our population change and then that will be reflected through the people who work for the town? Or how do we become a more welcoming place for?
That I don't know the answer to. I think, people are moving to the town of different, ethnic groups. And I think as more people move in, more people will get hired. Maybe we should do a study. I don't think there was any intention by the last councils or the last town managers that they were trying to be discriminatory in their hiring. But, I don't think it's an issue, and I hate to speak on it without knowing. But I think it just has to happen naturally. We should not do anything to prevent it. That's for certain, but it needs to happen naturally.
All right. That might be it, other than, so I think I know what you're proud of, what you feel good about, what you've accomplished, and kind of that dream of yours in particular for a real recreation center here in town. In the next 2 years, what do you see as something that you just feel like this has to happen? Within the next 2 years, this has to happen. And it could be a simple, concrete thing.
Unfortunately, for the next 2 years, I really think COVID is going to be the center of what's going on in the town. And what we need to do is, once we get beyond COVID, then we need to see what we can do to, expand. I'm sorry, my wife didn't know I was doing an interview.
No worries at all. So, real life interrupts.
So let me start over again. Next 2 years are going to be COVID, at least the next year. After that, we need to make sure that the town is probably the most important issue is to make sure that there's enough schools for how many students are going to be here. Right now, we have enough schools. There's a good chance if they build that 450 unit that we were talking about, or just the change, we are going to be short on schools. And if that's the case, we need to be a year ahead, not a year behind. You know, Bill Belichick always gets rid of people 1 year early as opposed to 1 year late. That's how we need to do. We need to be 1 year ahead of time. So if the schools, we need a new school in 2025, we need to start building that in 2024, not 2027. And that's how usually people do things. They do it 2 years too late, and then there were people suffering. I had cousins that went through coal, the old coal, and pieces of the ceiling would fall on their heads. Like literally, they were in campers. It was crazy because they waited 2 years, well, maybe 10 years too late, as opposed to doing it 2 years too early. So that's what we need to do in the next 2 years.
To figure that piece out. What do we need? What do we need as, you know, as a school district, you know, what do we need?
We need to be prepared as opposed to be, you know, most people in politics, they respond. When something happens, they create new laws in response to that law. After 9/11, they did the Patriot Act. After everything, something happens, they do something. Then usually they go too far. Nobody ever does it beforehand. We need to have it done a year or two beforehand so that when the schools do start getting overflowed, we're ready. We don't have to have that transition where we have too many kids in the school. Like we're ready to go, you know, a year, 2 years ahead of time.
All right. Well, I think with that, it's Friday night almost. Yeah, 5 o'clock. Thank you very much for fitting
Going
this
trick-or-treating?
in. Yeah, well, I got to get my candy ready first for all those
Yeah,
kids. I don't know. We'll see who comes. I don't know.
I will tell you this. I don't know if everybody else is going to do this. I am going to put a table out in my driveway.
Yeah.
That way the kids don't have to come to the door. I'll probably borrow one of my friend's fire pits, have a little fire, and just sit outside the whole time.
Yeah, that's kind of what we're hoping to.
Everybody be safe. Oh, the kids are going to make a lot more candy because you can hit more houses if you don't have to run to the door.
I hadn't thought about that. I had not thought about that. Believe me, I was right there with you. I always wanted to get as much candy as I could. Anyway, well, thanks a lot, Mike. Have a good weekend, and I'll catch you on the other side.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.